I knew something was off the second Laya Benton's name popped up on the HOA portal access logs 3 hours before her official swearing-in ceremony. No welcome casserole from the welcome committee, no cheerful all homes email blast, just a fresh president badge registered to the developer's daughter and a calendar block titled Strategic Alignment and Legacy Roles Review. In HOA speak, that translates to, "Who can I fine or remove today to feel like the queen of the cul-de-sac?" Still, I stayed up late that night like I always did, combing through the compliance checklist for a $275,000 county subsidy renewal. That agreement wasn't just keeping the streetlights on, it was the entire power grid holding Pinecrest Estates together. Every clause had to line up perfectly. Every continuity report had to be airtight. And I was the only homeowner left who actually understood how all the gears meshed without grinding the whole neighborhood into code violation hell. They never really saw me. Not the parade of new board members clutching their color-coded Pinterest boards of aesthetic standards. I wasn't a name on the welcome sign or a voice dominating the monthly Zoom meetings. I was just Dana from compliance, the invisible lady who made sure the county audit passed every single year, who quietly fixed it when someone forgot to report a change in the CC and RS, who trained the replacements for the people who got elected over me because they smiled prettier at the annual barbecue. Every time I raised a red flag about improper fence heights or missing pool inspection logs, I heard the same scripted line. "We'll circle back at the next meeting, Dana dear." Nobody ever circled back. But I didn't need applause or a trophy. I had access to the files, to the buried language in the master service agreement with the county, to the workflows Laya Benton didn't even know existed because she was too busy shopping for president's stationery. She wore her daddy's last name like body armor, clicking around the community center in stilettos that echoed louder than any actual idea she'd ever had. Meanwhile, I was in my home office, the digital basement of Pinecrest, with a flashlight and a shovel, making sure the foundation didn't collapse under her Gucci heels while she posted about elevating community standards. By the way, if you made it this far into the HOA nightmare and you're already smelling the petty fines coming, go ahead and smash that subscribe button and drop a like. It helps more than you think, and honestly, it keeps stories like this coming from people who've actually survived the clipboard warriors. We appreciate every single one of you. That night, as I finalized the subsidy continuity matrix and archived the rollback protocols, I caught myself doing something embarrassing. I smiled, not because I love the work, but because no one else could do it without turning the entire neighborhood into a liability lawsuit waiting to happen. When the treasurer accidentally deleted the last 3 years of inspection reports last quarter, I was the one who restored everything from an offline archive before the county noticed. When the previous president forgot to include the signatory line on the Q3 amendment, I redlined it and pushed it through before any homeowner got slapped with a surprise assessment. My name was nowhere on the fancy board plaques, but my fingerprints were all over the survival of this place. That should have made me feel powerful. Instead, it made me a target. At 9:13 p.m., my phone buzzed with a group chat message from someone whose name I didn't recognize at first. Laya B. No greeting, just, "Please prepare documentation of your core responsibilities for the strategic review. Due end of day tomorrow." Strategic review? I actually laughed out loud in my quiet kitchen. I'd been here 9 years, and I had become the strategy for this entire subsidy. Laya was 3 weeks into a president title she didn't earn and was already collecting scalps like they were limited edition designer bags. But fine, let her swing the gavel. I wasn't afraid of titles because I knew something she didn't. She thought I was just another volunteer homeowner. I wasn't even on the HOA payroll in the traditional sense. I was a named project liaison tied directly to the master service agreement with the county, protected by a clause so strict the original attorneys had nicknamed it the Dana Doctrine. No substitutions, no removal, not without 45 days written notice and county sign-off. My role wasn't optional. It was mandatory for the subsidy to keep flowing. But Laya never read the actual documents. She just read LinkedIn headlines and daddy's golf buddy advice. So I drafted the documentation exactly as requested. I made it so thorough it could pass for a full county audit. I sent it at 4:59 p.m. sharp the next day, along with a copy of the current statement of work. 2 minutes later, Laya scheduled a one-on-one board meeting. Just her and me. Subject line, next steps. I already knew what it meant. Not because I'm psychic, but because people like her always mistake silence for submission. And I have been quiet for a very, very long time. The thing about HOA nepotism is it doesn't knock politely. It barges in wearing a $2,800 blazer and an inherited sense of purpose, then immediately starts measuring your grass with a ruler. Laya Benton didn't even wait for her official headshot to hit the community Facebook page before she began swinging her new title like a wrecking ball. President of Strategic Operations, she announced at her first all-home Zoom like she'd just been appointed secretary of the cul-de-sac. She was 27 with 1 actual year of work experience and a resume built entirely on advisory roles at her father's golf buddies companies. The girl couldn't spell CC and RS, let alone understand what they meant for the $275,000 subsidy that kept our roads from turning into pothole museums. By 10 a.m. Monday, she had sent a community-wide email demanding updated org charts and redundancy reports. Redundancy, that's HOA code for tell me who's been here too long so I can look powerful. Her second message was more personal. Subject, legacy role audit. She asked every committee chair to provide a list of volunteers and liaisons whose titles didn't map cleanly to her shiny new vision for scalable, future-focused leadership infrastructure. My name came up first, of course. It didn't help that I'd never played the game. I didn't attend the wine and sign-up happy hours or post heart emojis under her motivational lawn care memes. I was the one who told new residents where the digital bodies were buried and how to avoid stepping on live compliance wires. If something broke, I fixed it. If something was misfiled, I found it. If someone forgot to follow county code, I patched it before the inspectors ever showed up. None of that showed up in a PowerPoint slide deck, and slide decks were Laya's love language. Wednesday afternoon, her assistant, some poor guy named Jesse who looked like he hadn't slept since orientation, emailed me. Please briefly summarize your role and value add for the strategic ops function. I replied with one line. My value is documented in the master agreement with the county, clause 7.3c. Please consult the full covenants. 10 minutes later, Jesse booked a meeting with me and Laya for Friday at 5 p.m. That's the thing with people like her. They think a late Friday meeting intimidates you. Like I hadn't spent the last 9 years watching 5 p.m. turn into midnight just to keep someone else's 6-figure mistake off the county radar. I wasn't scared of Laya, but I was getting irritated because she didn't just threaten my role. She threatened the fragile, undocumented, stitched-together workflow that kept the biggest subsidy in our HOA history flowing. And not to be dramatic, but she threatened my pride. Thursday, the ping started. My access logs were being reviewed. Then the board treasurer sent me a courtesy note reminding me that volunteer engagements are subject to periodic evaluation. They never send those unless someone is already pushing for removal and trying to cover their legal behinds. Classic paper trail behavior. I smiled, not because I was amused, but because I'd seen this movie before. They think they're being discreet, but every email is a breadcrumb, and I had baked those breadcrumbs into a full damn cake. That night, I stayed up until 2 a.m., rereading the statement of work and its appendices. I wasn't just covered, I was insulated. There were 3 layers of protection around my liaison role, including a paragraph that named me explicitly as a continuity requirement. It didn't matter if Laya was president, queen, or supreme ruler of the trash can placement committee. She couldn't remove me without written notice to the county and a 45-day review window. And as of Friday morning, no such notice had been filed. I walked into that 5 p.m., meeting with my binder in hand, black cover, no labels, just tabs and receipts. I sat down across from Laya in the small glass community center room they use for sensitive transitions. She didn't offer water, didn't ask how I was, just tapped her pen on the table and said, "We're going to restructure some functions and I'd like to understand what it is you actually do here." I paused just long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then I answered, "Everything you haven't broken yet." Her face tightened like she wasn't used to being spoken to by someone who didn't ask for her approval first. She opened her laptop. "That's not very constructive." "No," I said, "it's operational." There was a bead of silence thick enough to choke on. She didn't like that, but she also didn't know what to do with it because deep down she could feel it. I wasn't bluffing, I wasn't begging, and I damn sure wasn't scared. That's when she leaned forward, locked eyes with me, and said the 6 words that would detonate everything by morning. "Pack your files. We're moving forward." She didn't even knock. She just strutted in like she'd been waiting her whole life to say it. "Pack your files. We're going in a different direction." 4:57 p.m., 3 minutes before close of business, when most homeowners are already pouring their first glass of wine. Classic rookie power move if it weren't so calculated. She was trying to catch the old dinosaur off guard. She didn't have a termination letter, no exit paperwork, no full board vote, just her smug face and a box from the supply closet with one flap missing and a giant Staples logo screaming cheap optics. Behind her, Jesse hovered with a tablet and a nervous look, clearly drafted into a war he didn't sign up for. My portal access flickered. Files logged out. Community group permissions dropped. My key card buzzed twice in my purse. Their way of telling me it was dead. That was it. Just a digital guillotine and a cardboard casket for 9 years of invisible labor. No explanation, no thank you, no one from the legal review committee, which was ironic because they were about to need every attorney they could find. I didn't say a word. Didn't ask why. I already knew. She wanted to make a show of it. Show the homeowners she had teeth, show her father she didn't need training wheels, show the board she could disrupt the culture. She thought I'd argue, maybe cry, maybe raise my voice in the community chat. Instead, I stood, pulled my binder from the second drawer, black, zippered, thick with 9 years of decisions they never noticed, and dropped it into the box like it was the only thing worth salvaging. I left the coffee mug, the pens, even my HOA polo. I wouldn't be cold where I was going. Jesse tried to mumble something, maybe an apology, maybe an instruction, but Laya cut him off with a glare. "We'll arrange next steps in writing," she said, like that was supposed to sound official. It wasn't. They hadn't even checked the terms of my liaison role. I walked past the community center, the place I used to command without needing to speak. Nobody looked up. Maybe they didn't know yet. Or maybe they were too scared to make eye contact with a ghost. In the parking lot, the security guy reached for his phone. He was checking if I was flagged. I waved my deactivated keycard at him and said, "Already dead," like it was a punchline to a joke only I understood. He didn't stop me. Outside, the air hit different, cold but not cruel. I sat in my car, placed the box on the passenger seat, and stared at the entrance sign like it had personally betrayed me. Then I laughed, short, sharp, hollow. Because what just happened wasn't just dumb. It was dangerous. They didn't remove a volunteer. They tried to terminate a clause. A clause baked into a contract that was holding up $275,000 in annual county funding like a single screw in a sagging ceiling. And they didn't even read it. Or worse, they thought I wouldn't remember it. I drove home in silence. Didn't call anyone. Didn't draft a group chat rant. Just opened my laptop, connected to my personal cloud vault, and pulled up the statement of work for the current fiscal year. There was bold and simple. Clause 7.3c. Named project liaisons may not be removed or substituted without 45 days notice and written approval from the county grant administrator. Violation constitutes material breach. 45 days. I've been given 3 minutes. That binder in my passenger seat wasn't a souvenir. It was evidence. Every system escalation I handled without formal ticketing. Every internal control Laya streamlined, without routing through proper review. Every time I documented the thing someone else forgot. They thought they'd box me out. They didn't realize I was the box. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry. Anger is a short fuse. What I felt was colder, deeper, heavier. The kind of fury that doesn't explode. It settles into your spine and keeps you sitting perfectly still at your kitchen table until the sun comes up. My laptop was open. My coffee had gone cold twice, and I was staring at the same paragraph over and over again. Not because I didn't believe it was there, but because I needed to feel its weight every time my eyes passed over it. Clause 7.3c. Named project liaisons may not be removed or substituted without 45 days' notice and written approval from the county. It wasn't buried. It wasn't written in fine print. It was 3 lines down from the section header, bolded, signed off by both our attorneys and theirs. Laya had walked into the community center at 4:57 p.m. and swung a sword through a wire that held up nearly every compliance deliverable for our entire subsidy. And she didn't even check if it was plugged into the county building. See, that's what happens when you give a title to someone who doesn't know the difference between a volunteer and a named party. I wasn't appointed like the rest of the board. I'd been written into the original covenants when the development was founded, a condition precedent to the subsidy contract's continuity clause. My role wasn't optional. It was prerequisite. But Laya never read the agreement. Hell, I doubt she even knew where we store the originals. Most of the people on the executive committee wouldn't recognize a continuity clause if it bit them between their perfectly plucked eyebrows. That's the problem with inherited power. You don't learn how things are built, so you have no idea what happens when you start tearing them down. Around 6:12 a.m., I open my inbox. No messages from the board, no recall notice, not even a digital pad on the back. I typed out exactly 1 sentence and attached 1 document. No sarcasm, no commentary, no anger. Subject: contract reference. Immediate concern. For your awareness, please find the attached statement of work referencing Clause 7.3c. Recent developments appear to conflict with agreed terms. Kindly advise. I sent it to 2 people. The county's external grant administrator, someone I'd worked with during the original contract review, who once told me, if this thing ever gets shaky, you call me first, and a BCC to my own records. Not for revenge, just for precision. Because I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to call the developer and threaten to sue. No, that would have given them the illusion that I believed they still had control. They didn't. The moment Laya gave me that box, she cracked open a clause so essential, so brittle, that the only thing holding the subsidy together now was the question of whether I'd respond. And I had. The email hit inboxes at 8:16 a.m. Sharp. Flag red. All caps in the subject line. Material contractual concern. Carver liaison status. That's government speak for you better respond fast or the money stops. It went to the entire HOA board, every committee chair, and 2 county compliance officers, all of whom were still sipping their overpriced lattes in what was supposed to be a routine subsidy renewal prep meeting. The timing wasn't accidental. The county team knew exactly when to drop the bomb. Right before the board walked into the community center war room they thought they controlled. Inside that glass-walled room, the mood shifted before the coffee got cold. I wasn't there, but I'd sat through enough of those meetings to picture it perfectly. The board chair blinking too fast. The treasurer glancing at his assistant like maybe the email went to the wrong list. Laya holding her phone an inch from her face like the pixels would rearrange themselves into a less dangerous version of the truth. The email itself was surgical. To whom it may concern, please confirm that Dana Carver's liaison role remains in effect per the terms outlined in Clause 7.3c of the Master Agreement. As this is a material condition of our subsidy, any change to her status requires written county approval. Kindly confirm by noon today to avoid further compliance review. Regards, David Selby, Lead Administrator, County Grants Division. No pleasantries, no wiggle room, just a scalpel across the jugular. The board chair looked up slowly from his tablet. What is this about? He asked, looking around the room like someone would translate the legalese into something he could spin. But no one moved. Not until Laya, in her tailored cream blazer and smug little half-smile, flipped her laptop open and chirped, "Oh, I let her go Friday. We're restructuring legacy positions. It's fine." The room didn't breathe. The board chair's voice dropped. "You terminated her. She's just a volunteer," Laya said breezily. Not even paid, technically. Technically, the treasurer repeated, his voice going thinner by the second. Yeah, we got people who can pick up her scope. The insurance liaison flinched like he'd been slapped. Then came the words I'd waited almost a decade to hear, spoken not in rage, but in the quiet panic of a man realizing the wheels just came off the aircraft mid-flight. Tell me, the board chair whispered, staring straight at Laya. It didn't terminate an active contractual requirement. Laya's mouth opened, then shut again. A beat passed. Her eyes darted down to her screen, scrolling too fast. She was looking for a clause she didn't know existed until that morning, trying to find some version of events where she could pretend this was a misunderstanding instead of a torpedo she'd personally launched into the hull. No one told me there was a clause like that, she finally said, voice sharper now, defensive. You didn't ask, the compliance officer said flatly. A moment later, someone forwarded the original statement of work to the group. It was all there in black and white. Clause 7.3c. Dana Carver named explicitly the required 45-day notice with county sign-off circled in digital red. The silence wasn't awkward. It was nuclear. And that's when the county's second email landed. This one even colder, pending written clarification on MS. Carver's status. The county recommends halting all subsidy processing and freezing further disbursements. Please treat this as immediate until resolved. $275,000. Frozen. Just like that. In the corner of the room, Laya stopped typing. No more half smile. No more voice. Just the beginning of a very long morning and the first visible crack in a porcelain ego that had never seen a real consequence until now. By 10:02 a.m. The board's internal legal counsel had logged my role in the breach register. A redacted copy was hand-delivered to the general counsel, who flagged it to the full board with one sentence that read more like a throat punch than a memo. Immediate compliance exposure due to unauthorized liaison termination in violation of Master Agreement Continuity Clause. 10 minutes after that, the county responded again. Short, lethal. All subsidy proceedings are paused effective immediately. Onboarding for new projects suspended pending written assurance of continuity compliance. No further actions will be taken until this matter is resolved to our satisfaction. The email was marked high importance, all caps. This wasn't a hiccup. This was a hemorrhage. The renewal meeting scheduled for noon, complete with catered lunch and branded folders, was canceled with a 2-word update. Postponed indefinitely. And I know for a fact the treasurer nearly vomited when he heard he'd been counting on that $275,000 to hit this quarter's budget. Bonus season was around the corner, and now was ice water down the spine of every board member who'd ever dismissed compliance as just paperwork. They tried calling me first. It was a perfunctory email from the board's secretary. We'd love to clarify the terms of your engagement. No apology, no responsibility, just an olive branch dipped in liability prep. I ignored it. Then a text from the developer's assistant. Mr. Benton would appreciate the opportunity to speak with you directly. Are you available today? I'll let it sit unread. Then came a call. It was around 11:42 a.m. when my phone rang. I recognized the number, personal cell, not routed through the community office. That alone told me they were sweating. I let it ring 4 times, then declined. He left a voicemail. His voice was lower than usual. Dana, I want to apologize for how things were handled. I was unaware of the specifics of your role, and well, obviously this has become a larger issue than it should have been. I would really appreciate a moment to speak to understand how we can move forward here. Please call me when you have a moment. I listened to it twice, not because I was considering calling back, but because it felt like vindication. Soft, stammering corporate vindication from a man who finally realized he'd let a storm loose in his own gated community. But I didn't respond because I didn't owe them anything. Not my explanation, not my emotional labor, not my trust. They threw me out like a spare part, and now they wanted the engine back because the car wouldn't start. Let them sweat. Let the silence stretch until they felt it in their bones. The longer I stayed quiet, the louder that contract clause screamed through every street in Pinecrest. They thought they were playing chess with someone who only knew checkers. But I built the board they were standing on, and right now I was watching them fall through it. They didn't call from the community office line. It came from a blocked number routed through someone's personal device, probably to avoid detection or maybe just to skip protocol for once in their lives. It was a board member, not Laya, a woman I'd spoken to twice before in my entire tenure, both times during audit season. This time her voice was clipped but not cold. "Dana, we'd like to ask for your perspective privately, off record for now." There was no arrogance in her tone, no HOA lingo, no spin, just the kind of directness that only shows up when people realize they've lit a fuse next to the community gas line, and now they need the one person who knows where the shutoff valve is. I didn't gloat, didn't mention the 47 hours of silence I'd given them after being publicly humiliated and wrongfully removed. I simply said, "I'll send over documentation." Not opinions, not theories, just receipts. Within the hour, I uploaded a single PDF to a private folder titled Continuity and Compliance Red Lines, FY24. It was 132 pages. Each change tracked, dated, and sourced. Every unauthorized edit, every skipped approval, every backdoor tweak Laya had made in the system without routing it through proper review. She had touched protocols she didn't even understand, modifying reporting language, stripping multi-signature triggers, erasing redundancy checks because they looked cluttered. But the one that sealed it, page 58, section 9.1 of the internal control transfer log, a required signatory field that validated dual approval on county implementation changes, was deleted by Laya Benton 14 days before a system control failure exposed a data sync issue that resulted in a $1.2 million potential liability. The HOA quietly ate at the time, blaming process gaps. Now the paper trail was illuminated in a surgical spotlight. Not out of revenge, not out of spite, just truth. Clean, cold, unarguable. When I opened the document, I know exactly how it felt, like swallowing glass. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse. It was precise. Every page dated, annotated, cross-referenced with policy. There were no opinions, no narratives, just a slow, methodical unveiling of someone who played HOA president with other people's property values. An hour later, I got another call, this time from the board's legal counsel. The voice on the line was softer, almost embarrassed. "Dana, the board has reviewed your documentation. There is unanimous agreement that your removal was in violation of both the county agreement and internal covenants. We'd like to discuss terms of reinstatement." He said it slower now. "Direct reporting to the full board, independent advisory capacity." I said nothing for a full 5 seconds. "Then, you'll get my terms in writing." Because I wasn't coming back as a name on the org chart. I wasn't here to play neighborhood politics or clean up messes with duct tape anymore. I'd already done that quietly for 9 years. And all it took to erase me was a click and a cardboard box. Now they'd read every word I ever wrote. And they understood the difference between a volunteer and a condition. The formal offer came in a sealed envelope, hand-delivered by a courier who didn't meet my eyes and didn't say a word. The letterhead was board-issued, not from Laya's office. That was their first olive branch, cutting out the middlewoman who had allowed the fire to start in the first place. The opening sentence was pure corporate theater, but the second line mattered. "Effective immediately, you are reinstated under the revised title of Senior Continuity Advisor, reporting directly to the full board compliance committee." No dotted lines, no middle layers, no detours through inflated titles or fragile egos. I answered only to the people who signed the checks and who now finally understood whose signature mattered more. The rest of the letter was surgical, a 3-year protection clause embedded into the county contract. Any modifications to my role required joint sign-off from the board and external county council. My access restored, my authority codified, my name for the first time written in ink instead of whispered in group chats. They didn't ask me to return to my old desk in the community center. Instead, they offered a dedicated office 2 floors above my previous one, away from the buzz of petty complaints, outfitted for county-level work. No key card required to enter. Biometric access only. The kind of change you don't advertise, but everyone notices. And Laya? She didn't get fired. Not exactly. But her title was stripped down to something that sounded like LinkedIn purgatory. External Engagement Coordinator. No strategic, no operations. Just vague enough to sound important, but with a scope limited to event calendars and corporate gift baskets for the annual barbecue. Her access to internal systems revoked. Her permissions to modify documents suspended. Compliance off limits. She could book a venue, but she couldn't touch a policy again if she begged. I heard she cried in the community center restroom for 20 minutes after the board meeting. Not because she lost her title, but because she finally realized it was never hers to begin with. The developer predictably tried to salvage face. He requested a meeting. I accepted it, but only on my floor in my office during my hours. He walked in sheepish. No assistant, no rehearsed charm, just a father trying to mend a disaster of his own design. I want to offer you a public apology, he said, on behalf of the association for how this was handled. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I shook my head once. No, he blinked. No, not interested in theater, I said. I want structure, documentation, prevention. He nodded slowly, realizing the difference between a headline and a legacy. They issued a new internal protocol the next day. Clause 12A, now known informally as the Carver Clause. No personnel or liaison termination shall occur without legal confirmation of contract dependencies, including all master agreement and CC&R provisions relevant to continuity, risk, or compliance. I didn't walk back into the community center like a hero. There was no standing ovation, no welcome balloons, just a quiet shift in the air when people saw me again, something between respect and caution. And that was fine. Let them remember what silence can do. Because when you spend your career keeping systems from falling apart, you learn how to build one that doesn't need applause, just boundaries, just clarity, and a name that no one will ever dare erase again. 2 weeks later, the subsidy was finalized, quietly, without the usual internal celebration or champagne emails. No Facebook banner. No all homes announcement from the board. Just 3 signatures at the bottom of a digital contract that kept $275,000 moving through the neighborhood's veins for another year. Mine was the first. Dana Carver, Senior Continuity Advisor. Below mine were the Treasurer and the General Counsel. No president, no Laya. I signed it at 8:16 a.m. Out of habit more than symbolism. But when I saw the timestamp echo across the audit trail, I didn't change it. Let it land exactly where it should. The same hour, the same minute, the moment that froze a boardroom and reminded an entire gated community where its foundation really was. I didn't say much in the aftermath. I didn't need to. The internal memo went out that afternoon. Subject line, updated protocol, personnel transition compliance. Buried near the bottom was the language that mattered. No personnel or liaison terminations may occur without legal confirmation of contract dependencies, including all master agreement and CC&R linked continuity clauses. They wrote it like policy. I read it like a monument. In the neighborhood, it didn't look the same anymore. People spoke softer when I walked by. Committee chairs who used to roll their eyes when I asked about sign-offs now sent confirmations before I even pinged. Even a legal review committee double-checked their own workflows when my name was involved. But it was the third floor that really drove it home. That was Laya's floor, or had been. I passed by her glass-walled office one afternoon on the way to a meeting. The blinds were open, the desk stripped bare, no monitor, no chair, not even a pen, just a single frame sitting dead center on the glass. Inside it was a printout, the 8:16 a.m. Email. Subject, material contractual concern, Carver liaison status. I stood there a moment, not smiling, not gloating, just acknowledging that timestamp had done more damage than any speech ever could. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just final. Some people fight fire with fire. I prefer paper. And sometimes you don't need to raise your voice. Sometimes all it takes is a timestamp.